Welcome back to Hermetic Perspective. This is going to be part two of my series on the Republic. If you haven't seen part one, you should go watch it, but also if you've read the dialogue, you really don't have to, as long as you know what's going on, you've got some context. You could totally just jump in here. So you basically divide Book 2 of the Republic up into three parts. First off, you have Glaucon and Adeimantus offering up their definition of what justice is, and they're building on the discussion from the last book. Next, you have Socrates' initial response to this, where he begins building the Kallipolis, and that's the hypothetical city that Socrates uses throughout the Republic to explain what his definition of justice is, as we discussed in the last video. And thirdly, you have Socrates' tirade against Hesiod and Homer, the most important Greek poets of the time, and his disagreements with them. That part's going to be in next video. This video is going to be focusing on just the first two parts of the book. So we begin Glaucon's argument with his explanation of the three types of good. First, there are things good in and of themselves. Secondly, there are things good for themselves and their consequences. And finally, there are things that are burdensome but good for their consequences. Now, what he means by consequences here are basically the second order effects of the thing. Glaucon claims that justice is the third type of good, something that is burdensome for somebody to do, but ultimately still beneficial for the consequences of your just actions. Socrates, on the other hand, believes that justice is the second type of good, something that people benefit directly from doing as well as for the consequences of. He argues that the state of being just is not something that people enter into because they love justice. It's simply because they want to avoid having unjust things happen to them. He articulates kind of an early version of social contract theory. He says that justice only emerged as people began to organize into larger groups, and they wanted to keep from others stealing from them or killing them for no reason. And justice is essentially a kind of mutually assured destruction where if you do something unjust to someone, the rest of the people who don't want unjust things to happen to them will come together and punish you in some way. He is saying that it's not an eternal, unchanging form. It's not something that has always existed. It's really just a social defense mechanism more than anything else. So it doesn't have an essence of its own. Following from this, Glaucon explains that any man who is able to escape consequences for his actions will throw justice out the window. To exemplify this, he brings up the story of the ring of Gyges, which is a ring which, when found by a man, allows him to become invisible. Now, the man who finds this ring goes on a rampage of unjust actions. He steals, he kills, all that kind of thing. And what Glaucon is saying here is that any person who found the ring of Gyges would do the same thing, because justice is not something which benefits the person, it's something that you do because you're scared of consequences. To emphasize this point, Glaucon proposes a hypothetical. Imagine a just man who is treated by society as the most vile, unjust person possible. And then on the other hand, imagine an unjust man who is treated as a paragon of virtue and justice. Now, the just man is going to be persecuted and hated until the day he dies. And the unjust man is going to be treated as a community leader and as a great man. His point here is that it's not the trait itself which matters, but the social consequences of that trait. Adeimantus then chimes in to reinforce this argument by reminding us that even the gods themselves do not care about justice in and of itself. He cites Homer and Hesiod's poems to explain that an unjust man could do a sacrifice to these gods and gain the same amount of favor that a just man would from doing the same sacrifice. If an unjust person offers the same penance that a just person would, he'll get the same results. The gods don't care about justice in and of itself. They care about the actions that come along with justice. So if an unjust person acts just towards the gods, he'll be treated by the gods as just. It's basically the same argument that Glaucon is making, just applied to the gods and using Homer to back it up. Socrates begins his rebuttal here by zooming out from the individual to the level of the city-state. Now, the reason he's able to do this is because Socrates believes that justice is an objective thing, not a subjective thing. He believes it's an unchanging, eternal form. Therefore, it's going to be the same in the city-state as it is in the soul. The city-state is basically just a larger canvas mirroring that same soul. So he thinks it's going to be easier to recognize justice in this form than in the individual. To Socrates, the state must provide three things. food, housing, and clothing. Therefore, the most basic city is composed simply of a farmer, a builder, a weaver, and a shoemaker. It's only a city of 4 or 5 people, that's all you really need. Now, this formation also implies that the city folk will be sharing the fruits of their labor. The farmer will provide the citizens with food, the builder will build a house for the farmer, the weaver will take care of the clothes for everybody, and the shoemaker will provide for the builder so that he doesn't have to spend his time making his own shoes. This is where the specialization comes in. People can take their time to perfect their craft without having to worry about growing their own food because the farmer is taking care of it. That's the benefit of a city. To grow the city, you simply just continue this process. You can have merchants, tradesmen, whoever you want, whatever kinds of jobs you want. And the city will grow to provide for their needs. There ought to be more farmers to give more people food. But really, his idea of the healthy city is just a place where people share in the fruits of their labor and they understand that what they're doing is kind of a social contract between all the people in order to provide for each other so that they can focus on things they want to do, not to spend all their time worrying about where their next meal is coming from. What Socrates is emphasizing in the healthy city is essentially just a place where people share in the fruits of their labor and support each other in a simple way. They're not seeking profit, they're not seeking to exploit others. It's a place where people work together. They persist on a simple diet of barley, cheese, and boiled roots. They eat together and they honor the gods while living simply. It's his metaphor for the healthy soul. If we think about the basics of Neoplatonic thought, the most important thing to remember is that everything in the universe, from the gods to a grain of sand to human beings, are simply emanations of a single unitary divine principle known as the One. As you move further away from the One, you become more chaotic, more divided, and more like human beings, which are the most divided thing there is in the universe. Something like the gods are more simple, more unitary, more like the One. So, when Socrates describes the healthy city, he's describing a city which is closer to the principles of the One and further away from the titanic principles of complexity and chaos which are embodied on Earth. The healthy city is an ideal to work towards, and he contrasts it with the bloated city which is proposed in the next part of the book. Glaucon chimes in after Socrates explains the healthy city to say that to him it sounds like a city of pigs, or a place where people only have their most simple, primal desires met. Socrates, recognizing that the city he's described is the vision of a philosopher, not of the common man or a real city that exists on Earth, pivots to a more realistic setup where even more people must come in order to provide luxuries to the citizens of the city. This could be anything from meats to fine clothing, things that they don't need but that they want, things that are more in line with the titanic earthly principles than the simple unitary principles which Socrates advocates for as a philosopher. Socrates describes this new city as the inflamed state, a place where more and more people come seeking these cheap luxuries and conveniences. And it's analogous to a soul ruled by the principle of division and complexity and chaos. It's a place that has all kinds of ill attributes, just as a soul ruled by these titanic principles will have ill attributes as well, one of which is the need to expand and divide itself even more. In the inflamed state, this need for expansion and continued division takes the form of an army for conquest. As the numbers of the city grow, you need more and more countryside to feed them, more and more farmers to feed them. And so you'll have to have a standing army with soldiers who are able to take new land in order to facilitate the growth of the city. It speaks to the way in which your soul, if ruled by this divided principle, will never be able to be enough. It can't be contained in and of itself. It doesn't stand on its own. A divided soul relies on other things, which allows it to exist in this unnatural state, which is not like the One, but is instead more like the titanic principles. The inflamed state represents the titanic principle itself, which seeks the utmost division and complexity. Luxurious city described as an unfortunate byproduct of the needs of a population stuck here on Earth in our matter-bound bodies, our souls trapped, unable to escape to a more unitary, natural way of life. Whereas the healthy city is the hypothetical city of souls who have transcended this dividedness, become more unitary, more monadic. What this means for our individual soul is that you must make sure to moderate the titanic influence of life on Earth because they're going to be inevitable. Whether like it or not, your soul still exists in a corporeal body, so you have to engage in things that your body needs. The key is to not let those things consume you and to moderate them as much as possible. And that's Socrates' lesson in talking about the inflamed state here. Socrates then explains that the soldiers, or as he calls them, guardians, must be both amenable to citizens while being intractable to outsiders. The guardians must be ruthlessly protective of their people and be able to embody these two seemingly opposing natures, that of the kind soul looking to help his own, and the violent soul looking to bring ruination to his enemies. Go too far on either side of this equilibrium, and you'll have either an ineffective soldier or a soldier who attacks his own city. Likewise, this mirrors the need for souls on earth, or in Genesis, to balance themselves by warding off the earthly principles which seek to corrupt us, while also making sure not to go too far in the other direction and only embody the ideals of unity, as this would leave a person vulnerable in our current corporeal state. Now, this discussion of instilling a love of philosophy in soldiers is really a way for Socrates to bring up the idea of how he would educate the people of his city. He wants to educate them in a way that trains both their physical bodies as well as their spiritual selves, and educates them on philosophical matters, teaches them to honor the gods, allows them to be strong in both departments. Again, balancing the unitary monadic principles of the one and the chaotic divided principles of the Titanic here on Earth. He again is emphasizing that you need a balance of the two. It's at this point that Socrates jumps into his discussion of the portrayal of the gods in classical Greek mythology, and especially his disagreements with Homer and Hesiod, as I discussed in the intro. This section, where he talks about that, rounds out Book 2 and extends into Book 3. It's a lot longer. We have a ton of Proclus's writings on it, so it's going to take us probably a few videos to get through that part, but I'm pretty excited for it. It's going to be more in-depth, more Neoplatonic, because what we've been talking about thus far has been a little more surface level, a little more logic-based. But what's to come is going to be a lot more esoteric, a lot more metaphysical in the Neoplatonic direction, so I'm pretty excited for it. But what's important to remember from this part of Book 2 is essentially Socrates is telling us about how, in reality, the human soul can't be expected to fully embody the principles of the one as it would in an incorporeal realm. We're on Earth here, and the soul is trapped in our bodies. So we have to mitigate the influences of the Earth and the Titanic principles which govern it. And that's what he's saying. We have to be clear-headed and exist in reality and not let ourselves get lost in the clouds, but also not let ourselves get pulled down by these bad influences. It's all about mitigating and harmony in these opposites. So thank you for watching. Next video is going to be pretty good, like I said. I think you guys will like it a lot. And yeah, I appreciate you watching. Thank you.